Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with Pro Wrestling Logic, and we continue our TNT Tuesday Night Titans series. We are in September of 1985 here, and we are certainly powering through what is a very interesting program, sometimes for all the right reasons, sometimes for all the wrong ones. We should be through with TNT. My plan is by June 1st, moving into Saturday night's main event, which should take us about a week to do, and then we need to move on to something else. We'd love your votes as far as what that should be. In any event, vote, comment, subscribe, like below, and do all of those things. This is a relatively noteworthy edition of TNT for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we have new tag team champions managed by Johnny Valiant, the dream team of Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine. Now, Valentine is a multi-time Intercontinental Champion at this point. Also, is a now tag team champion. Valiant is a former tag team champion with his brother Jerry from the 70s. So, quite the championship trio here. We then see the Dream Team in a squash match, basically. Sal Baromo and Red Walsh to provide the opposition competition. Now, there is debate throughout this program of the way in which the Dream Team won the championship. I had misspoken. I got teams mixed up, or timelines mixed up. Actually, teams and timelines mixed up. I had mentioned in an earlier review that Volkov and Sheik were the ones to use the cigar on the eyes of the U.S. Express. It was actually Valentine and Beefcake with the help of Johnny Valiant. What had happened was I actually had looked up to see where that was and misremembered it. So that is there and certainly worth taking a peek at, to say the very least. In any event, this is a very one-sided match, as is to be expected. The figure four is the source of victory for the champions. Dream Team defend themselves. They are not in the least bit concerned with the way they won the championships, only that they are, in fact, the champions, and that is something they are extremely proud of. They defend their right to be champions, claiming that perhaps Barry Windham, who was the one burned with the cigar, was intoxicated or somehow inebriated or unable to compete in a proper fashion, and so that's brought to light here, obviously that not being the case. But then we go and we see a promo from the former champions, the U.S. Express. The Express talk about the damage to the lens of the eye of Barry Windham, and they talk about it perhaps being permanent damage. They talk about wanting, revenge and all that stuff. Of course, the Dream Team moves into a feud relatively quickly within a couple of months here with the British Bulldogs, culminating, of course, in their WrestleMania 2 match in April. It's interesting to me, though. I mean, if you look, this is September, and it looks as though they are mapped out until April to get where they want to be with this. And I mean, they couldn't map out 2 months now in WWE, but they're mapping out what September, October, November, December. That's 4. January, February, March, April. They're mapping out an 8-month series of matches, programs around the loop, around the horn. Some really interesting things, and it's interesting there, to say the very least. Dream Team responds and says they will fight the U.S. Express again if need be, but that they don't think they should have to. They are champions and they are to be dealt with. There's many teams in line, and they don't feel they should have to waste much more time with the U.S. Express. Mean Gene Okerlund visits Brian Blair at a kids wrestling tournament. We see a lot of footage which strikes me as odd of children wrestling collegiate style, amateur style. past, B. Brian Blair does still, I think, at least up until the last few years, holds the amateur tournament in the state of Florida. Some 20 plus, 30 plus years later, whatever it is, and he certainly was dedicated to the sport of amateur wrestling. It's just interesting to me that Vince would feature kids, and it's also interesting to me that as I go forward, I'm a little bit ahead here. I'm in December, or the beginning of December of '85 in my viewing, and the use of kids is becoming more and more evident in the TNT program. At least every second or third week, there's a segment with a young person, and so I think that was done by marketing design. Young people want to be on the program, therefore young people want to watch the program. At least that's how I would look at it. Steve Gatorwolf, who pretty immediately here goes into obscurity of being an enhancement talent, talks at great length about the struggles of the Cherokee Nation and the Native Americans throughout the years dealing with the U.S. government. Interesting to me that government bashing was allowed on the program back in the '85 time frame. Gatorwolf says they broke something like they signed 100 treaties and broke 101 against the Native Americans, including but not limited to the Cherokee tribe. And suffice to say, McMahon is basically says the government doing what the government always does. And for those that follow my other projects, including my life coaching channel, you will know that I am against the concept of government, not just a specific government, but the way the government runs. And abuse of power, I think, is in all 195 nations in the world. So, needless to say, when McMahon says this, I'm kind of lightly cheering along, as it were. In any event, we move on to a relatively nondescript squash match here for Steve Gatorwolf. Gatorwolf really doesn't get a push for more than a couple of months, which is sad. I think with the amount of attention they gave him, they could have done a whole bunch more, but they didn't. He does come out with full regalia, headdress, and the like. He does what you would expect a Native American to do, winning with the Samoan drop, oddly enough, almost like Tatanka later with the Papoose to go when he was a heel. So there's something about the tie-in between the Native Americans and the Samoan drop that I don't quite understand, even back here in 1985. In any event, up next is former Intercontinental Champion Don Muraco. Muraco out for an interview, says he is not happy with the cold weather, says he is about to go hibernate. Now this is September, and he is already thinking of going back to Hawaii. Imagine if he survived till November, December. Obviously he does, as he doesn't get to take a bunch of time off, but the prevalent presentation is that he does in fact get to do so. I think that makes him, more potentially dangerous or more of a heel. Come back from that enhancement, or go to a Muraco enhancement match with Jimmy Jackson. Jackson gets a few basic offensive maneuvers, a drop kick and the like, but Muraco, who for the most part is a very punch kick basic wrestler, gets his offense in and then hits a modified tombstone onto Mr. Jimmy Jackson for the victory. Muraco spends a good bit of time talking about the desire he has to make the tombstone a major finisher, how he wants to be back on top, but also we go into a second segment. Muraco really dominating segments. I don't know if he was just a guy they really wanted to focus around, or they had bigger plans for that didn't materialize, or what the deal was, but suffice to say, Muraco a big deal here. He talks about being talked to by Steven Spielberg and other directors in Hollywood, talks about wanting to act, and he, along with Mr. Fuji, is allowed to close the program as we close the program for the 20th of September, 1985. What's to follow in the next several weeks is some really crampy comedy, Fuji Vice, Fuji Bandito, Fuji General Hospital, and other such things. I did not like these looking back at them. Some people think they're cult classics and love them. We'd love your opinion on them as we go forward here. But if you are new here, please like, subscribe, comment below. We will have more consistent action for you in audio format every day. And please feel free to reach out if there's something you'd like to hear about on the channel. Let us know. Take care. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment.